Well, the excavation sites are taking place along the McIntyre River, and what we've been uncovering is evidence of people who were living there about, we estimate, around 4,500 years ago. And that was a time period when the lake was a lot higher than it is today. And the remains of what we're finding are essentially the activities that people had to do in order to survive in the subarctic at that time period, which is a lot of stone tool remains. That's also the kinds of things that tend to survive archaeologically because they're not organic.
The site seems to have a lot of stratigraphy. So we see that it seems to have layers of river-washed cobbles or pebbles and whatnot over top of deposits that are much lower, as well as we have deposits that are on top of that. So I think that the site is quite old, and for a site that's stratified, this is quite rare for Ontario. Well, especially in northwestern Ontario. We don't find a lot of those.
Now, I also should mention that we are able to do all of this work because we have been approved to do this on Fort William First Nations traditional territory. So we sought approval and have their consent to work in this area, and then share that information with the community so as to help kind of support more about their ancient past in this city.
Hey Jill, what do you think this is? And would that have been made into a tool?
It is. It is a part of a tool, definitely. So this particular piece is very important because it is an actual tool, an actual functional tool that was made likely thousands and thousands of years ago. And this particular type of tool has been flaked on both sides. And so it's very definitely something that's been modified by people very long time ago. And we're really interested about this particular piece because it is flaked in a way that probably indicates an older occupation to the site, likely around the 8,000-year-old time frame. So we have both the 4,000 to 5,000-year-old occupation and then the earlier, maybe 8,000 to 9,000 occupation as well. So this is very exciting for us to see this new occupation, well, old occupation that we've uncovered here. And Jared finding this tool is very significant for indicating that older occupation.
This was a biface, meaning it was worked on both sides. If you look on this side, you see some scarring, but if you flip it over, you can also see some scarring on this side. And one quick way to notice that is if you look at the edge, you'll notice it'll go up and down like in a wavy pattern like that. And slowly this would have been flaked off continually until it became a projectile point, but likely it was broken and discarded. But we can study the techniques that were used because it's been partially made, and we can kind of figure out what techniques were used and what era that came from.
Well, I think archaeology serves a very important role in documenting history because for the vast majority of time that humans have been around, this well predates documentary records. And so archaeology plays a really crucial role in understanding the history of people long before there were written documents. And in the Thunder Bay area, we have evidence of people living in this place for at least 10,000 years. And much of that time frame is really only something that archaeologists can get access to. And so for that reason, the work that we do is really critical in documenting the past of Indigenous peoples in this area.
Well, right at the moment, we have a shortage of archaeologists in northwestern Ontario in particular. And so we're really wanting to get people trained to do the work here, to make sure that we're looking after all of the archaeological sites in the area. And that's working together with Indigenous communities to preserve the heritage in our province up here, as well as in southern Ontario, because that tends to be where most of the focus is. And so we have a real shortage here of northwestern Ontario archaeologists in particular. So we're really wanting to have people trained to work here. What we're seeing here in northwestern Ontario and really across the province is an increase in development. That might be housing developments, transmission lines for hydro corridors, highway developments, things like development for building features, that sort of thing. And so we have to make sure that archaeological assessments are completed before all of that work goes ahead. And so this is becoming more and more of an issue in Thunder Bay as well as other parts of the province. And this archaeological assessment has to be done in order to preserve these archaeological sites for the future. It's not just us that we're thinking about, it's 7 generations ahead, basically. So we're wanting to make sure that more people are getting trained to do that work, including Indigenous community members, so that they can actually be watching out what's happening in their community area when before development is occurring and during development, but also just to have more people trained in archaeology overall.
So I'm Andrew. I'm a third-year history and anthropology student. What we're doing here is we're looking for artifacts, and how we're doing it with this pit specifically is we're going by quadrants, so 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. And the process in which we do it is we go layer by layer. So a layer will be 5 centimeters. And so we clear a layer, clear a layer, clear a layer, clear a layer, gather the artifacts, do the paperwork, map them out and stuff like that on a piece of paper, and make sure we have all the information, because if you find an artifact but don't really have that sort of attached information, like where you found it, what depth it was, then it's kind of not useful for other archaeologists or people who may want to review that information and learn about it. So that part of like the information gathering part of archaeology is very important. And yeah, that's just what we're doing right now. And what I'm doing here is I'm just clearing the big obstacles that we usually have to dig around, but as we go lower and lower, they're uncovered, and then we can remove those larger stones and just put them off to the side and stuff for now. But
so I dug a lot of this pit, and as I was digging it, like right now you just have these rocks that are here, but as I was going down from the surface, I was pulling a whole bunch of very similar rocks out, and a lot of them had like even more ochre on them. So it's kind of something that once you take it out of the ground, it doesn't really make sense. Like if you have like a fire pit and you move all the rocks out of the fire pit, you don't really have a fire pit anymore. You have a pile of rocks. What mattered with the fire pit was the shape the rocks were in, and it's very similar with this. We had all of these rocks that have been broken apart, found together, and all of them had these little nodules of ochre within them, and that along with the depth, what else is going on the site, we were able to piece together this sort of story of what was going on right here a very long time ago. So I think that people were trying to get this material, this ochre, for the things they wanted to use it for. They heated up the rocks, and then when they smashed them apart, they needed to put the rock that didn't have ochre in it, like this would have been where you get the ochre out, but then you just have the rest of the rock, and then they put the rocks here, and that's kind of why we have this pile of them in this one place. And it's kind of concentrated here, right? So if we were to open up another meter by meter square unit here or here, we might be able to get a fuller understanding of what was happening here, but that's something we'll have to leave for another field season.
So today I'm going to explain to you guys the art of flint knapping. It's an art that goes back over millions of years. And basically it's how to make stone tools out of rocks, all right?
The NICHI program is a program offered by Indigenous initiatives at Lakehead University. And we've been able to work together with their program for quite a few years. In particular, Clarence Surrett, a technician in our department, and also Chris McAvoy have been really working hard to help share archaeological information with Indigenous peoples in that kind of a context, in the student context. And so we've been able to work together with them this summer in particular with hands-on training, and also hire some students, 6 students in particular, to work with us for the whole summer so that we can teach them all about other aspects of archaeology. So they worked with us in the field school and also in the lab, and working with different kinds of cultural items, and also learning how to do things like flint knapping and making pottery and that sort of thing. So a really well-rounded education, we hope.
They probably came out a few levels ago, okay? But now they can come out now. A lot of times day-to-day is I help train students. I help them with the research and all that. So a lot of times that's what I do. But I also help with the teaching as well. So any classes that we have, I might be asked to help with some teaching, or as well as some of the research that we have here at Lakehead. We just finished doing most of our field work. Now we're just in the process of doing some cataloging and some cleaning of the artifacts. So the first step is to clean the artifacts, and later on they'll be cataloged and photographed too.
Yeah, we're cataloging these and just going over the different artifacts that we found in different units and test pits, just checking to make sure they're not shale, or I found a couple of roots that look like rocks, but also we're just getting a better idea of all the materials that we found over the whole project. So it's very enlightening.
It's important in terms of them learning what the different types of materials are, different types of cultural items are, because there's significance between all the items that we find. So you might have some stuff that looks very unappealing to the public, to be like, well, that doesn't look like anything, but to the trained eye, a lot of these could be different types of tools, it could be different types of objects for certain purposes. So in that reason, the students need to know this kind of stuff, because it's actually something that delves in culture that a lot of people are not really familiar with.
Well, there are always surprises in archaeology. We often have these preconceived notions about what the past was like, but the archaeological record, the act of doing archaeology often kind of challenges that. I think the most surprising thing that we found is that the cultural deposits are a lot deeper than we were expecting. Prior to the work that we did in May, the expectation was that we would find only material on the surface, but we're finding it a lot deeper down, which then kind of challenges our idea about how long potentially people were at that particular location. And it may be that there is a repeated occupation over a much longer time period than we thought. So we're still having to work out those details. It's kind of early yet, but that's a small example of just how often the picture that we have through archaeology can change through time.
So essentially what you have here is a little scraping tool. So as you can see, all of the stuff that I'm taking off here, and so it's working quite well. So if I was to actually take this and actually use it for like cleaning up a hide and removing all the fat. So right now we kind of figure, based on what we can see, that it's part of the middle period, so which used to be referred to as the Archaic period. So it's a period that we don't really know too much about. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to learn more about this period, about the people that would have made these tools. And right now, there's some information out there, but there's not a whole lot. So this is why some of the work that we're doing can be quite important, because it might give us a better sense of how these people lived and what they did here on campus, thousands of years ago, and what kind of activities they might have been doing. Yeah, slice right on the edge. And see how sharp that is?
It's really funny, because the sort of older sites in the area we know a lot about. The early period and more recent ones we know quite a bit about. But this middle period is really perplexing for us. So we have this great opportunity on campus to actually study this type of a site.
Well, I think it's important for the community because it's local, it's on campus, first of all, and it's accessible, and it's also a part of the heritage of Thunder Bay. So in Thunder Bay, we have a lot of really old sites. We have sites that are, that basically run for the last 9,000 years, 9,500 years, so really, really old sites, as well as we have a range of sites. We have a range of sites running from like a few hundred years to thousands of years old. So it's quite interesting to have that locally. So we don't have to go far, and the fact that we have some on campus is kind of cool, So, and it's kind of like a treat that we don't see at a lot of campuses in Canada. So there are very, very few campuses that have local archaeology on campus.
We have heritage laws in Ontario that govern the protection of archaeological sites, but municipalities have a certain amount of flexibility when it comes to how they approach archaeology. Sometimes archaeology isn't always part of the discussion when development occurs. And what we'd like to see in the future is there's more consultation, not only with the archaeological community, but also, of course, with Indigenous communities in order to help preserve the archaeological sites, which are very numerous, especially in the proximity of rivers. And so that's something that's certainly an ongoing project and one that I think is really important to focus on in the coming years, especially given the importance of reconciliation with Indigenous community members and also the decolonization process. That's such an important thing in municipalities across Canada.
I am the office manager and co-owner of Woodland Heritage Northwest. We are a partner in the digs that are going on at LU, as well as a collaboration with LU, the Ontario Archaeological Society, and the Wasagan Transmission Line to promote and to train field technicians for work here in Northern Ontario. Well, I've always had a passion for archaeology since I was a young child and always been fascinated with history. And Northwestern Ontario is such a vast territory and very unexplored in the sense of cultural history. And there's a lot up here to protect. So as the developments in the north go on between whether it's roads or mines, for example, there could be a lot of cultural heritage there. So it's our passion to find it and protect it.
In every place across Canada, there's always the possibility of different types of development occurring. And within our particular mandate of heritage advocacy, archaeologists are always wanting to make sure that sites are not impacted by this development. So we would work together with the proponents to make sure that sites are not disturbed. And so we always need more of this to be done within Northwestern Ontario in particular.
The archaeological record is something that very few people really have a knowledge of. And I think that's primarily because it's not necessarily something that you hear about unless there's a news item. But the main thing that we want to convey to people is that Thunder Bay has a very long history of people occupying this area. And so it's important to kind of understand that long history as well as to actively preserve it for the simple reason that without archaeology, then there's a tendency for these sites to become potentially destroyed by development. And so the archaeologist then plays a really prominent role in helping to preserve that aspect of the cultural record.